Hi, everyone. Welcome to Fail Forward Live. My name is Michelle Ragus McBean, and I am delighted to have my next guest here today. Andra Hedden is Chief Marketing Officer and co-founder of the wildly successful and growing across the pond Marketopia. And Andra, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Michelle. I'm so excited to be a part of your new podcast. So thank you for having me on as a guest.
I'm so thrilled. And so here's the premise of our conversation today. Obviously, when you hear the titles CMO, when you hear the titles CEO and co-founder, you think, wow, like this person is wildly successful and they've gone through, all of this history to get where they are today. And I'm sure that everybody would love to learn a little bit more about your background. How did you get to where you are today? And sort of what did that path look like for you?
Absolutely. So I won't go too far back, but I'll give the nutshell for you. It's interesting. One of the things you and I talked about offline a little bit was what matters to us and what does it look like to get to different places in life or to do certain things like launching a company, for instance. And I actually always knew ever since I was really little, my dream was always to have the picture in my mind was always to have a portfolio of businesses that I owned with my significant other, and the blend between personal life and work life looked like this. I always wanted it to be like my kids were at the office, my husband and I are talking about kids, then we're talking about work, and we're just flowing back and forth through both of them. And that was just always my dream. And my parents laughed because it was since I was very young, I wanted that. And so as I grew up, it was, one of the lessons that both my parents gave to me, as I said, always have a passion for whatever it is, have a really good understanding of what you love, and then figure out how to do that every day. And the dollars will follow, and they always do. And they said, if you do want to create your own companies, and I come from a long line of entrepreneurs, if you want to create your own companies, start off learning from other companies who have already done it well. So they said, learn on someone else's dollar, and then figure out what you like, what you don't like, and then go off and do it yourself. And I think that was one of the best things that both my mother and father could have taught me, because instead of having that young passion that says, I'm just going to go out and do it myself, I know how to do it, it was, I'm going to go figure out some great companies. And I was fortunate to be with great companies like Anheuser-Busch and Cartier and many others that I learned lessons that were just priceless.
I love that so much. I think that that's such an incredible life learnings and I say that with managers as well. Like I've had bosses and leaders and managers. And my goal when I was younger was I always wanted to lead a team. And I joke that I had, I learned from the best and worst of those managers to really conduct who I wanted to be as a leader, how I wanted to, inspire and innovate my team into a way, and even cross-functional teams, right? Because you don't always have direct control over people. So you have to have a lot of influence in that negotiating.
Definitely.
And I love the idea of Cartier. I would love to hear all the stories and see any
Well, it's so funny. Ever since I was young or even in school, I always loved to work. I've always loved to work. So in high school, I loved to work, even though my parents would say, don't worry, don't focus on school, don't get a job, don't do this or this. I would go, no, I always wanted to do that. I always wanted to work. I always wanted to learn. I always wanted to create. And I did that from a young age. When I think I got my first job. My first official job was actually before I was even 14. And it was friends of family who had companies, because I'm like, I want to go just learn. And so they would, in the summer, I would work for different companies, just helping out. And then when I turned 14, I really wanted to go have an actual job. And so the only place locally in Florida that I could go get a job was the Gap. And at that time, the Gap was like the most amazing place. And so I went to the Gap and I interviewed and I started working there, and I absolutely loved it. And I think from then on, the lessons that you pick up, whether it's selling or understanding people, or there's just so many things. If you're a sponge, any job, no matter how big or small, can teach you so much.
Absolutely. So I also, like you, started working at 13. I was a shampoo girl in my Aunt Lorraine's hair salon, and I would up there. And then after that, my second job was actually at McDonald's. Ooh. And somebody burnt me with the fry later. So I got promoted to cashier
Oh
that
my
day.
goodness.
But I will tell you that that was an experience in humility that I think I'm so appreciative, because you deal with all sorts of people and you learn about customer obsession and having a happy customer experience. And I think everybody should go through that process of having to clean the toilets
Yeah.
and learn how to actually be
Mm-hmm.
humble and appreciative of those things, because without those really interesting experiences early on in life, waitressing and doing all those things, I don't think I would have the same understanding of how to please my customers and be very patient. I think that's also
Well,
very
I think you just
important.
said something really smart, that not that everything you say isn't smart, but something you just said, I think is really awesome. And it's all of these jobs. And I genuinely do not think any job is too big or too small. And I think as an entrepreneur, you have to be bred like that, because you have to be willing to do anything to get the job done. And there's nothing too big or too small. So the lesson in learning people is why I think all of those jobs are so important. I tell everyone that, if you've had a job serving or doing something along those lines, I tell everyone they should be a server at some point in time in their life, because every single table is its own project. You've got to get to know the people. They're all different. You've got to understand what makes them tick, what's going to make them happy, how much time they want by themselves, how much time they want to be tended on. You have to learn people and their nuances. And the deal is that no matter what business you're in, no matter what role you're in, people is always going to be in the mix. So if you know how to navigate people and you know how to navigate and get things done or influence or lead, picking up those nuggets along the way, no matter what the job is, will make you wildly successful, no matter if you're in a very corporate political arena as a corporation, or if you're in a startup arena that is quicker and more agile. Those lessons are ones that will help you your whole entire life.
I love that so much. And I have this inside joke with Jay, because, in the movie When Harry Met Sally, where she thinks she's high maintenance, but everything's so complex. And that's sort of me. He said, I'm a nightmare for everybody that serves up. But I do think that there's a big element of that, right? Do you want me to consistently come back to your table, or do you want to be left alone? And how do you what is your currency, or what is your love language, your business language, your serving language, and how that applies across the board really does reflect on the individual, and everybody's different. So that's a very valuable lesson. I love that, Andra. So looking back, what advice would you have given young Andra at 21 years old?
21. Okay, what was I doing at 21? So at 21, I was in college. I think I was just about to graduate college. And at that time, I had done a handful of internships in school. Really enjoyed each of them. And interestingly enough, I had a lot of great female leaders. I'm sure we'll talk about that, but I had a lot of internships. I was really trying to figure out what I was looking to do. And I want to say, the advice I would give myself is really what I try to follow, which is just, try to sort out where you're going, and then just reverse engineer that with the steps that you take, and trust your gut along the way. And that's something that I try to live by. And the other thing is, I think it's really important to know that every single person that you meet and everyone who comes into your story in life is important and is there for a reason. So never burn a bridge. Welcome every opportunity to get to learn about whoever is coming into your storyline, and be the best person you can be at all times, and be cognizant of that at all times.
I absolutely love that. And I feel so similar in that aspect. For me, every single person, I you tell your kids not to talk to strangers. I'm like the complete opposite. I'm like, a stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet.
Yes.
Like, but don't talk to them and don't take candy from them. But, but there is this element of I always want to learn from somebody. And I like to say I'm very greedy with my mentors. Everybody in my life has taught me something along the way. And, you and I have kind of gone through this process where you worked for a very large Fortune company, and then you kind of worked for startups, and so built your own startup from the ground up. So what, in looking back in retrospective, was your biggest failure, and what did it teach you, and why?
Biggest failure. And I know this is called fail forward. And so biggest failure is tough for me, because I don't know that there's one thing that's just, oh my gosh, that happened. And that was just the biggest thing. I think that and not to say that one might come, in my life that'll be like the devastating one. But I think, there's always lessons along the way. And I think that for me, I try to learn from all the bits and pieces. And so, even in starting a company, you've always got to be constantly analyzing and understanding, the market, the product, and then solving it based on it. So for instance, I'll give a business reference. When we first launched the company, we were only launching as a digital agency. And that was what we were going to focus on. We were going to be a digital agency that solved for the needs of vendors and MSPs in the channel, and that everything was going digital. And that's where we were going to focus. And then we were going to outsource tele. So tele was never going to be a part of our internal business. And we launched that way. And I had great partners given my life at Disty and previous, that I said, look, I'm going to go to those friends of mine and I'm going to have them be our outsourced tele. And that failed big time. That blew up big time because the outsourcing that piece of the business, particularly in B2B, was so difficult because the standard, and much of it was offshore at that time. And there's just no way that the quality was ever going to be as high as we wanted it to be for the standards we were setting for the business. So that lasted about a month and a half. And we said, nope, not doing it. And we brought it internally. And I think that whenever you fail, which I'm a big fan of making the moves and figuring out if it was a failure or a success, but keeping moving forward at all times and do it calculated and do it smart. But there's going to be failures if you're not standing in place and living in fear. So with that one, and I don't think that was a huge failure by any means, but what I think is important about any failure is failing quick and solving quick. So you figure out it was a failure. You don't sit and dwell in it. You go, okay, great. That's not going to work. Outsourcing tele is not going to work. What do we want to do? And I remember distinctly Terry and I talking with each other, and we're like, okay, neither one of us have ever run a call center. We're going to figure this out. Done. We brought it internally and we figured it out. We did what we needed to do. We surrounded ourselves with people who had run call centers before. We brought in the right type of talent. We created the processes that we needed. We created all of that and we stood it up. And so I think once you fail, you got to figure out why you failed and then fill those gaps with either the people, the expertise, the tools, whatever it was that you didn't have before, and then fill them and then move forward that way and keep tweaking and refining along the way. So that was a small one, but I think in business, I think there's a lot of opportunities for failure. There is, failing with hiring. That's a big one that you've got to be careful with, particularly this day and age, because if I almost look at it as your business. When you bring in individuals, they're in the house. So you've got to make sure that you're bringing the right type of individuals inside your house that are going to be a fit. They're going to be a culture fit. They're going to be on brand. They are going to, want to do the best on behalf of clients and on behalf of the company. And they're thinking about that, knowing that what's best for them will come if they're doing those two things right. And I think sometimes, particularly now in this day and age where, opinions fly online and people can go to LinkedIn and get another job tomorrow, I think you can fail if you don't hire the right teams. So we've had some of those. Obviously, I think any company does. And then you learn from it and you realize what you have to be on the lookout for, and you realize what a good candidate really looks like and who's really going to be a great fit. And we learned a lot of those lessons early on. And our team's just amazing. So
I love that. And I do agree. Culture is everything. And a large part of why people leave companies is because they don't appreciate the culture. They don't like the culture. They don't feel included in the culture. And everything I see from your pictures on LinkedIn and Facebook, you see the camaraderie, the teamwork, the excitement, enthusiasm that your team possesses. And I truly believe that comes from leadership down. You create the culture and then you hire the right people and you kind of have this symbiotic relationship of good begets good, if you will.
100%.
Now and for anyone who doesn't know, I want to expand upon that. You are married to your co-founder, Mr. Andra Hedden, and you, I'm sure, probably have your strengths and his strengths may not be the same, and your weaknesses and his weaknesses may not be the same. But I love the idea because you bring those two experiences together to forge this company. So I'd love for anyone who doesn't know who Marketopia is and what you do, can you please tell them?
Sure.
And can you sort of where your strengths and compromises with Terry come in to make the ideal company?
So yes, my husband and I are crazy, and we decided that owning, businesses together and having family together and doing everything together was what we wanted. And we love it. I just think that some people are bred that way, and some people, it sounds like the most insane type of lifestyle ever. But for us, it really works. We actually, before I answer your question, we joked last night at dinner that particularly during COVID, even before COVID, we're together 24/7. Literally 24/7.
Wow.
So last night we were joking. We're like, I wonder how many hours we actually spent away from each other this past year, because we're together the entire time. Even going to work, we only, it's the drive to work. We don't drive together because we've got different plans, different lunches that we do, all of that. So really the drive to work is the only time that we're not together during an entire day, which is hysterical. And obviously working because we are in separate offices and such, but you have to be bred like that. So yes, I did, my husband and I founded Marketopia together. Marketopia is marketing and lead generation for the tech space. So we help vendors and partners better their channel or their end user demand gen, and we help you grow. And that's what we do in a nutshell, and we do it all over the world. So with us working together, and that's all I'll say about us because this is more about the conversation. But with us working together, it's really interesting because I do think, talk about, failing, most businesses, particularly startups, fail within that first, 5 to 7 years. And sometimes even earlier, right? The statistics are staggering as you know. And the reason why I think comes back to that same piece we were just talking about, which was filling those gaps of what you do and don't have, and being humble enough to know that you can't do it all. Everyone's skills fall in different places, and you have to know where you are 100 at. Like, what are you really good at naturally in your being? What are you good at no matter what, or no matter who's around? And everyone has those things, those 3 to 5 things that I am amazing at this. And then you've got those 3 to 5 things that you're like, no matter how much schooling I do, no matter what I care about, no matter if I want it to be, I'm probably not going to be these 3 to 5 things, or it's not cost effective for me to spend my time trying to be that. And so if we can be honest with ourselves and figure that out and put the people around us that can fill those other gaps, that's when I think you can really succeed. And I think a lot of the failures where people will fail forward is realizing that, oh man, I'm not those things that I'm trying to be. I need to get someone to come be those for me. And I need to actually let up control and allow them to do that. And that's where it gets powerful. And so with he and I, we are twins in many ways. And then we are polar opposites in many ways. So we always joke, like, I am the culture person, the EQ, marketing, sales, strategy, business development. I am like the people side of our house. He, though, also has a sales side of the house, and he enjoys people, but it's different. And it's really fascinating. And then he loves like the back end, the finance, the operations, things along those lines. So we pair up on so much, and then we divide nicely a lot of the other big functions. And so that was a key to success for the longest time in Marketopia, is being able to go, okay, I've got these things, you've got those things, go. And then anything we need to decide together, come back. Hey, what do you think about this? Like, hey, what do you think about this? Okay, go. And it was a lot of that. And then every so often, because the way we see things is different, we would switch roles inside Marketopia when it was just the two of us leading. So when we first started, I led operations and product development and getting the agency stood up, hiring the people. I was HR, and I was agency and marketing services. He was sales and finance. And so he headed that side of the house. I headed this side of the house. And then after a few years, 3 years, I was heads down. He was heads down. We switched. He went into to continue to operationalize the services side of the house. I went in to do sales. And then a couple of years later, we switched again. I went back and headed marketing. He went back and headed sales. And then we started to bring in leadership. And so now we've got a great leadership team. But in the beginning, it was a lot of going, okay, you focus here, I'll focus here. And then we're going to go put a second set of eyes on it. I'll refine this, you refine that. So it was pretty neat. It was pretty neat.
That is absolutely fascinating. And I love that idea for so many reasons. One, you can never truly understand that role until you live in it. And the fresh perspective that you both get, kind of reimagining what it looks like for you, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't, and then bringing that fresh thought perspective really can enhance and take it from good to great. So I just think that's absolutely phenomenal.
It was fun.
And now I'm curious because, as I mentioned, you've expanded recently to UK. And so for anyone who wants to work for a cool company, either here in Tampa or in the United Kingdom, I don't know if you're hiring. I'm
We are.
assuming you're
We
growing.
are.
Sounds like but I will say that how do you manage from abroad? Because I know when I worked for Cisco, I also helped lead a global team, and it is unique perspective because culturally there's differences, and the way that people manage and having it still remain true to who you guys are and your vision while you're not there on the daily basis. Of course, in the future of work, I don't think you always have to be present, but how are you going to manage that?
So people. And I say that, you know, I almost, it's roping right back to how we started the conversation of learning people. And I think, you know, those jobs we talked about and learning people all through early careers and understanding how to influence people and see what skills people have and being able to discern quickly what type of person that is, how they're going to work. Ooh, I've seen that before. When someone has that characteristic, they're going to act like this. When someone has this one, they're going to be like this. And I think that comes into handy having an EQ like that, to where you can hire the right people for the right roles and set them up for success. And so the way that we're able to do that is people. We hired a really, you know, phenomenal individual who heads the group in the UK, and he came as a referral into us from a client, actually, who they knew that we were starting up the offices over there. And they said, look, you know, I've got a handful, you know, some people that we really trust over there. Here's one individual. And back to knowing people, we trust the opinion of this particular client. They paired us up with this individual. And it just so happened that in the interview process, he won out, and he's amazing. And we're very, you know, blessed to have him on the team. And he knows it. He gets it. He's been in the space. He is so fitting for our culture that it was amazing. And so he's done an awesome job bringing on that team. And we've got great collaboration between the two sides of the house. So he heads EMEA. It just so happens we're located out of the UK, but he heads EMEA, and then Australia is soon to come. APAC is soon to come. But it's about people. So knowing that the type of role that you're bringing on, really knowing what that role is going to take. So we both know very well that role is going to take someone who knows operations, who also knows the channel, who also knows sales and marketing, who also knows how to stand up something and has an entrepreneurial spirit, because we're not going to be there, right, due to COVID. So we've got to be able to trust that someone's going to roll up their sleeves and get it done, but also be able to be very seasoned to where they could actually do something like that and have the passion and the entrepreneurial spirit to want to. And so he is amazing. His name is Scott Tyson. He's awesome. And so he's leading that for us in the UK.
Welcome aboard, Scott. This is great. I can't wait. I'm going to come join you when you go to visit all of your locations around the world. I will.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Now, I did talk about mentors earlier, and I'm curious on who yours were. So if you could pick your top 3 mentors in your life, professionally, personally, doesn't matter to me, but who are they and what did they teach you and why? Why was that important to you in your journey?
So this at 3 is a tough one, because I feel like I've been really blessed with amazing individuals in my life. And I would say if I had to pick just 3, I would probably stick with maybe even just my family. And there's more than 3 in my family, but I would say everything from, I have a very strong grandmother figure, very strong grandfather figure. My parents are amazing. My husband's amazing. And even my kids teach me a lot. So I would say, you know, the lessons that come out of that, you know, my grandma was the one who really stressed family being everything and getting the most out of life and being a good person no matter what. She was so big about that. And she was the type of person who, you know, it didn't matter if you were the president or the cleaning lady, that you got treated the exact same. And she instilled that in all of every single person was invited in for coffee and she was always very hospitable and welcoming. And that definitely came through to the grandchildren. And then I would say, you know, my mother has a heart of gold. She's been heavily involved in volunteering and philanthropy our entire life and has a massive love of children, which I also have. My father is an amazing entrepreneur, and, you know, headed operations for huge companies throughout my childhood, did a ton of traveling, and then, you know, bought into a company and was an entrepreneur growing up. So I saw that into the business lifestyle and what it looks like to build out a business and to take it from one thing and really scale it. And then my husband is extremely inspirational, having been an entrepreneur almost his whole life since 14. He's brilliant.
Wow.
And it's just, it's really awesome. My grandpa falls into that category too. So I think my family has probably been my longest term mentor since they've been mentoring me since I was a little one. And I always like to say that, your family is a corporation. And one day I will write this book, Michelle. So one day I'm going to have a book, and I've been talking about this for years. It's going to be called The Corporation, but it's about how to grow your family up like a corporation. So you've got your leaders who are your parents, right? They're partners. They need to be lockstep with each other. You're growing up these employees, your kids. The goal is to grow them and be such a leader to them that they go off and do better than you could ever possibly imagine for them, just like you do with employees in a business. It's about them growing and adding value while they're there, and then they go off and do whatever they're going to do next. And so I think family, concept. Yeah, I think family is awesome. And then if I had to pick ones outside of family, I always talk about digital mentors. So ones that you've never met before, that influence you. And I have those in very different worlds. So some just entrepreneurs like the Gary Vaynerchuks of the world, the Mark Cubans of the world, kind of like the classics, the, Brene Brown, the Kendra Scott, which there's very different ones that are in totally different realms that have done very cool things along their life. Even reality television ones like Bethany Frankel. There's a ton of individuals in very different sports, high-end jewelry, like totally different arenas that can teach you so much. And then in my personal life, I was really fortunate to have some pretty awesome mentors along the way. And the more everyone, really digs into who are the women in your life, I went back, Michelle, and I tried to think, I went back to my very first internship. My very first internship was a woman leader who was amazing. And that was, I interned for a distributor, an alcoholic beverage distributor, Anheuser-Busch in Tallahassee when I was going to Florida State. It was the daughter of the Bushes. So Susie Bush, she was one of my first women mentors. She's phenomenal, taught me so much about like work-life balance and just how to just do it all. And she was amazing, is amazing. And then I was an intern at an event company. A woman ran it, and I was like her right hand. She was awesome. My first job with Anheuser-Busch, I had women bosses. At Innisbrook, I was in golf for a little bit, and everyone was women. Even the Sheila Johnson actually had just bought that resort, and so I was learning about acquisition and different takeovers and all of that. Women. When I was within distribution, it was women. I reported to women. So I was like, my whole life, I never really realized how many like influential, amazing women I reported to until everyone was really asking and bringing it up. And I'm like, wow, I was really fortunate, and they've all been phenomenal. So.
That is absolutely incredible. And this obviously, is such an important topic to both of us, just strong women leaders, strong women mentorship, and, just the inclusivity of having diversity of thought in your company, in your team, in your products and services. And so I would like to ask you why, for any young girl out there who's like listening to this conversation, what could you share with them, as sort of a mentor for what they may aspire to being? And also in terms of, your trajectory and looking at all of the wonderful female leaders that really taught you how to lead, did that impact your idea that you can do it? Because, a big problem for women is the imposter syndrome, where they overthink and they second guess, and they don't put themselves into a position of just making it happen because they've already, eliminated themselves before they've given themselves a fair shot. So was that a part of that catalyst, or was it also, Terry and your family and all these inspirational women leaders that helped you say, yes, I can?
So I think if I were to say one thing, your first question was, what would you say? And I would say, you can do it, would be my one short sentence. Like, you can absolutely do it. And that is the answer to any question that anyone could have, girl, boy, whoever, is you can do it. Yeah. So do it. And that is that simple. And I would say that I so many scenarios that happen today, particularly in, diversity and inclusion, and, a lot of the conversations that we're having, and making sure that there are, female members and male members around the table, because it's so important. When I think back, I think that I just got really lucky that I had a very strong mom, very strong, that grew me up. And she used to always say when I was little, she was like, sweetie, like everyone's going to know your name. Like she was me. I would be a baby, and I'm like, da, 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 da. I'm just like doing my, and she was so cute. She is and always will be anything is possible. And that was kind of the motto of my family. And that's what I tell my kids too. Anything is possible. You can do it, and just go do it. And same thing with my grandmother. She was so strong. Both of my grandmothers were so incredibly strong, so driven. You know, my mother's mother was an executive in the corporation that she worked for. So she never felt like she was held back. She just like trudged forward and did it. My grandmother, same thing. She was wildly successful. She just trudged forward and did it. And so I think I had really great examples. And I think I was very lucky that the seeds that were planted for me mentally from my family was that there wasn't any difference. I had a brother, so I didn't even know. I didn't understand the differences until it really became something that was brought up in conversation. And I think because I didn't have those mental blockers, as you're mentioning, I didn't grow up with those. So I didn't hold myself back mentally from those situations. I just would like trudge for, I didn't know any different. And so I think, you know, as we go back and we start to continue to educate, and make sure that there are the right types of balance in the workplace, I really think that we have to start a couple steps before. And it really is all about, you know, teaching individuals their worth, helping them figure out their passion, helping to kind of reorchestrate their own mental, be it a man or a woman, reorchestrate their own mental ideas of what an office place looks like, what, you know, team member makeup looks like, what an executive looks like. I think, and knowing that everyone, you know, everyone's up for the job. So I think it's a little bit of the psychology too. And once you get there, then anything is possible.
Oh, fantastic. That is so important, right? Anybody can do it. And you and I are very blessed. I had a very strong mom, similar, you know, treat everyone with respect and believe every day that you wake up, you do what you're passionate about, and you can do anything you set your 100%. Mind to. And that's exactly what I want to instill in this podcast and in my own family and my children, that legacy.
You've got amazing girls that you're growing up. So it's awesome. And I think that's where it starts. You know, you've got girls, I've got 2 boys. And I think it's all about, you know, those family conversations and the, like what we plant in our child's mind about what the world should look like and how the world should be and how it should function and how you should feel about things and how you should act about things. So
yes, definitely. And now you mentioned something earlier also, which I also resonate with, which is the ability to consistently learn and grow. So what sort of things do you listen to or read that really help, you know, you get inspired and focused and motivated? What are some of your key resources to success?
So I do not read nearly as much as I used to. And I think that's a matter of just life speeding up. In quarantine, I think it's a luxury. I joke. I think it's a luxury to be able to hold a book like this and flip a page. I just think it's a luxury to have that much time. Like to me, that sounds like so much time to be able to sit in a quiet place and do that. So I call reading listening. And so I'll say, oh, I read that book, but it really means I listened to it on Audible. So I love Audible is my favorite thing of all times. And so that is, and I read a ton. I listen to a lot of Audible books and it's so easy. So I'll use my drive time to and from work. Mm-hmm. I'll go to the office and use that time. I'll use workout time, whether it is Audible books. And many times, you know, I'm not the science fiction type person. I am very much, you know, entrepreneurial, books about business, books about lessons, books about similar to the type of things you're talking about on this podcast. I love learning from people and their stories in their life. I think it's amazing. And I love people so much that's what really I enjoy. So I'll go back and I'll do even classics and I'll go back and re-listen to those or reread those because you hear them differently the older you get. Mm-hmm. And the more life experiences you've had, just like if you watch, you know, It's a Wonderful Life again, you're like, wait, I've seen this a million times. I didn't notice that. It's the same thing. So I listen to books that I love over and over and over again. And then I also listen to net new things. So if there's a new great author or someone who's making a speaking circuit that I'm like, oh, they had to have done something good. Let's like do a little research and see who they are, what they're about. And if I care enough to know everything about them. And then podcasts, you know, I think podcasts are great. And I listen to a lot of podcasts that are just about marketing and digital marketing and, my specialty areas, sales and marketing. But then I also listen to a lot of entrepreneurial podcasts as well. And I think it's great to listen to the greats and what they've done and what they've accomplished and learn backwards from them.
Do you tune into Clubhouse at all? Because I feel like it's sort of the new.
So it is the new thing. Do you know what is so funny? So my take on podcasts, and actually your Clubhouse was my first Clubhouse even instance. So I had already signed up for it when it came out, because a lot of times I'll sign up for anything that's new just to kind of get a little feel for it. And then when you held your Clubhouse a few weeks ago and I popped on that one, that was my first taking part in participation in one. But it's interesting because what I loved about Clubhouse, and it always takes that adoption curve moment. But what I loved about what I loved about Clubhouse is that, and in my mind, as I was in there, I'm like, I hope LinkedIn scoops it up. Like, I hope someone scoops it up, because what it does that I think is really, really great that Facebook and the others don't do, but it needs to almost be like coupled with something that already has some sort of an adoption. But the technology is amazing. So to be able to go in and almost be a part of a podcast, but not have to necessarily, but it's just audio. On Facebook, if you go live, it's a whole thing and it's video, which is still fine. But on Facebook, you have to actually be friends with someone in order to be connected and to follow whatever it is that they're following. So not all the time in business are you going to want to link up to someone personally. There's been a gray area and a meld between that in the last few years, but still, it's not everyone. And then on LinkedIn has been so tricky with who they let go live that you can't actually have live chats there as easily as you can on Facebook. So it's almost like all your business worlds in LinkedIn, all your personal worlds in Facebook. Clubhouse is this very interesting middle ground where you've got audio. It's like live, it's live podcasts, but you can tune in, you can re-listen, you can do all these different things. And so I actually think that there's really something to it. And I think if a company is smart enough, like a LinkedIn, they're going to go, ooh, this has the facets that we need. If we brought it into LinkedIn, each of the business groups and things could all be a part of it, and it takes the platform to the next level. So I actually think that there's a lot of impressive nuggets about the capabilities of Clubhouse. And I think if adopted in the right way, I think it could be really, really, really interesting how it changes business conversations in an audio fashion.
I love that idea. Yes. And I've heard rumors that LinkedIn is already trying to acquire or create their own proprietary version, which, the truth is this, right? Anytime a platform sees something that works, they leverage it. Hashtags started on Twitter, went everywhere. Videos started here, went everywhere. Photos, GIFs. There's certain things that just become emojis, and certain things that become very acclimated because they work. Stories. Now even LinkedIn has stories. They work from Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook. Everybody takes the best of the best and they leverage and lean on them. So I am intrigued. I'm looking forward to see what happens.
Me too. As am I. Well. I'm excited about it.
And as a busy working mom, I also love Audible, and that's how I get my exercise in. Like literally, I try to combine. I'm either listening to a TED Talk or an Audible or a podcast, and I'm like, I'm going to run. I can't do it on the Peloton because I have to listen to my music. But
are you loving the Peloton? How do you like the Peloton?
I am loving the Peloton.
Okay, good.
At Michelle McBain, we can raise. I'm the slowest one. I'm always excited. They'll be like, you are second. And I'm like, wow. And I'm like, out of 2. And I'm like, all right. It's a good run, But so now pandemic, it's been a long year for everybody. And, we're praying for everyone's health and safety and just to get back to a version of normal. I think there'll be a new normal. I don't think we're going to go exactly to the way things were. But or maybe you have been traveling, where do you want to go next? Where is your plans to fly to?
So I just did my first business trip this past 2 weeks ago, I want to say. And I actually just did my first flight this past couple of weeks. And as you know, I went to Denver, and then I went to Denver for personal, and then I went to Dallas for a channel event. And so it was really great to be around everyone again and to see the channel start to get back together, which I thought was wonderful. But personally, the next place I really want to get to when it opens up is I want to go visit our London office. So I want to get over there. I want to pop over to the UK. I want to meet everyone in person. And then I also have my best friend is over there as well. So I want to get over there, check up on the business, do some personal catching up, and I would love that. So a little bit of time until we can do that trip, but yes, definitely looking forward to it when we can.
Oh, I'm thrilled. I mean, and so we were just discussing this the other day because Jay won Channel Influencer of the Year, and that's in
I love that.
And you really can't accept an award like that virtually. Like that would not do it justice. And so we're like, okay, that might be our next big trip, like first one. And like, I don't know, at this point, maybe 18 months. So it feels so weird because we're such an active traveling family to not be doing that. But also there's been a calm and appreciation. I think that everybody, businesses, people had this unique opportunity where you talked about time and the unique opportunity to like read a story or something like that, because we're always rushing. And I think it gave me and our family time to be more introspective and time to be together. First time in a year, in 10 years, we've had dinner every night as a family. So there are definitely things that I do take out of it that I will hopefully appreciate and carry on. But big trips, we want to go to Antarctica or Kenya on a safari.
Both of those are great. I mean,
maybe we'll pass the UK at the same time.
I know. I love that. It was interesting. I mean, even just getting on a plane again, it was like riding a bike. So you get there, like at first you're like, oh, this is weird. And then you're like, oh, well, back to your same normal. I mean, and you just like us travel constantly. And so you get back in your normal rhythm. And then it almost feels weird to think that there was a year where this wasn't normal still. So it is definitely, it's been a tricky year on so many different levels. And I think tons of amazing things have come out of it as well. Just like any big catalyst it's going to stir, and then good things happen and other things happen, right? Things rise up and things break. And so it the beautiful piece is, I think, we're family time. Getting that family time. It is probably going to be very rare that this type of year where you get that much family time ever really happens again, unless you're just being very cognizant and choosing that. But when is that ever going to happen again, where we've got every day to be with the family, every day to enjoy each other's company and to do things that are really important. Like, it was very neat to see everyone whittle down their COVID crew. And it was, family was the option. And those are the only people, when it all came down to it, the people that everyone wanted and could be around was really your family. And only in some cases, right, the younger version of your family, or older if they weren't too old. So it was just this really interesting time. And I think a lot of families got closer. And I think that that's a really neat outcome.
Well, we know you and Terry will be close no matter what. We're going to even get the carpool together just because I want you all in. You have to
Oh my gosh.
So if anybody's looking for you, how can they find you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, so I would say best, easiest way is LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I'm constantly in LinkedIn. And if you want to find me, I'm Andra Hedden in LinkedIn. So be on the lookout for me there. And then if you need something, want something, have a question too, I'm not afraid to share out email as well. So andra.hedden@marketopia.com, and here to help. So any questions, any thoughts, any feedback, anything you need, just reach out and I'm here for you.
I love it. So here's my final question, Buzz Round. You could ask yourself something that I didn't, that I might have missed. What would you ask yourself?
Oh my goodness. I would ask myself, if I could ask myself anything that you didn't ask me, what would I? So I would probably ask myself, just because it's me, what about next ventures or things along those lines? Because we're constantly thinking about ways to, give back or other businesses. And right now, our focus is Marketopia, and our focus is, making sure that the channel's taken care of. And then at the same time, we've got a portfolio of commercial properties on the side as well. But we're constantly looking for ways to just continue to do more. And so one of my big passions is kids. So I absolutely love kids, and a talent that I sorted out that I have is storytelling kid stories. So one day in the not too far future, I will come out with a children's kind of story book line, but it's going to be in a really unique way. So more to come on that, but yes.
Oh my gosh. Andra, you don't know this about me, and we have so much in common. Like everything you say, I feel like you're my sister, that we were both in meant to be. I literally during COVID wrote my first children's book
You
for children,
did?
and yes,
Good
and
for
I have not,
you.
but it was my secret passion also because I love children
Yes.
and I want to help shape our future. And so the idea or concept is to encourage young women and girls and just diverse, children
Yes.
to pursue career in technology. So that's going to be stay
Yes, I
tuned.
love
Top
it. I will.
myself. So now that I've said it publicly, I'm forcing
Yes.
myself.
I love it. No, I love it. I love it. I love it. And I'm getting pings because people are like, you're supposed to be on your next call. So
Yes.
I am.
Future.
Yes, I loved chatting with you, and thank you so much for having me on. And I look forward to continuing our conversation.
Absolutely. Andra, have a wonderful week. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. You've inspired us all. I'm so
Mwah.
glad you can join us.
Bye.
Bye.